I need to unmute. Testing, we're good. Mama Sonia, if you all can hear me, we are ready when you are. Just let us know. Close this door altogether. Yeah. Can this door close right here? Yes. Because that would be self-destructive. Because you can see this on the camera. No, because when people come in, I'm sorry, I know. But
They're not sitting there, so we don't have them.
say that again, Mr. Bilbo. Oh, okay. We're testing Marani, Mama Sonia, when you all are ready. We're ready. If you can hear us, let me know. If you can hear me, I don't know who us is. Me and myself and me. But she can see y'all. So y'all turn up out there. Yeah, who reminded me she will be 90 in this year.
Oh, wow. This year.
So we gonna wait. Okay, I'm gonna wait on y'all when y'all 90, so. And vice versa, I will demand it. I wonder. So this messes things up, right? This is when it gets crazy. Oh. Morani? I unmuted right there. That's why I did that.
Yeah. But according to Mr. Bilbo, they should be able to hear you on that mic.
Yeah. How y'all doing? Woo! Listen, it's a beautiful day. Some beautiful people. Something about choosing to spend time with folks. Here we go. Turn up. Woo, woo, woo. All right, Mama, can you hear me? Oh, she's muted.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes?
I can.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I can.
Okay, the technology is with us.
Right.
Fantastic. Okay. Dr. Luckett, do we need any adjustments before? Okay. We see a water bottle. Are we live on YouTube right now?
We're live.
Nice. Hey, YouTube. Y'all follow up in those comments with some love.
All right. Whoa.
Woo.
You know we had an earthquake, right?
Oh, we heard. And we were so glad to be Southerners.
Yeah, I mean.
We don't know nothing about shaking accidentally.
No, my dear sister, I was coming down the steps when it happened. That's what's so unbelievable. Yeah, and I'm going down the last, and all of a sudden I always hold on down. You get to be 80, what am I, 89, and you cannot
89.
bounce down the steps. And I was holding on and everything and started shaking. And I said, oh gosh, one of those big trucks are passing outside the house again, right? Because when they pass by, it goes boom, 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 right? And so I called and I said, Marani, go inside and see. if if that truck is still there, whatever. And he came down the steps. He was listening. He said, "That's not a truck, Mom."
Mm-mm.
I said,
That
"What do
was
you mean?"
not
He said,
FedEx.
"We are experiencing." I said, "What?"
That's,
It
I
was
mean,
not. I mean, and
that's
and all of a
outrageous.
sudden things started to shake. It. But what it does with my vertigo is that I mean, like if the head goes boing, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
etc.
Mm-hmm.
So it was uh it was something else, and today has been something else also too. But it it should calm down, and they say we're going to have later on this week some good weather in the 60s. So
Oh,
you
nice.
people there in Georgia, we're going to be maybe in the low 60s. So we're going to be okay, right?
Well,
But no
listen, the low
more
60s is winter for us.
after.
That we put on
Yeah,
coats in the low
oh,
60s.
yeah, I
Okay, so
love
I think
that.
Dr. Luckett is going to do some introductions, some preliminary stuff, and then we get to talk.
Okay, thank you. Let me open
Thank
up
you.
Sonia
stuff.
Thank you.
Sanchez, it's
Okay.
good to see you. It's Robbie Luckett. So glad that we made this work and have you here. We have a bit of a special introduction to the program today, and I don't want to waste
Marani.
any time. And so I want to welcome our crowd. We do have an audience here who you're going to be able to see in just a second. And they're very excited to see you. I think we should give a round of applause to Sonia Sanchez.
I can't hear you. I don't hear you. I don't hear you.
You don't hear me?
I don't hear. I barely hear him.
Oh, she can
Yeah, I
barely hear
barely
you.
hear you.
Okay. We're going to get the sound
Oh,
turned up here
now.
so that you can
Okay.
hear me a little bit better.
How do you get this on?
Yep.
Oh, there we are. Oh, good. I
Okay.
couldn't hear. Right.
All right. Well, we got a bit of a
Happy.
special
Okay.
introduction for you. We have two students who are going to begin our program today, and I want to invite them to just come up one by one. Amira Wallace, who's going to share one of her works with us, Tell Her, as well as Caitlin Taylor, who's going to do our introductions. And I'm just going to go ahead and turn this over and invite Amira up here, and then Caitlin, you'll follow right after.
Welcome, everybody. It's nice to finally
Hello.
meet Miss Sanchez,
Hello.
Mama Sanchez, as Dr. Lumumba
Right.
has said. Said that you couldn't be here in person, but I'm glad I get to meet you in some capacity. So, like Dr. Luckett said, this poem is called Tell Her. Um, yeah, I'll just go ahead and get started. I knew a girl with sad eyes that wandered back and forth with the fake smile painted, plastered on her face, sat in darkness, ensnared in their grimy claws and no, I'm sorry. Thoughts ensnared her in their grimy claws and brought her to hell plenty of times, picking apart at every little thing. You're too fat. You're too short. And my goodness, look at that face. Those pimples, that nose, those dull eyes. As her body stood upright, feet planted on the ground with the same painted on, plastered smile, her soul, the very essence of her being, spent its time in the depths of hell, being scratched at, picked on. So she walked around, absent minded, with a cold heart. If you ever see that girl with those sorrowful eyes conflicting with that bright porcelain smile, tell her that redemption is near. Tell her to lift up her head and look to the hills from which her help comes from. No longer will she be dragged down to the pits as if she belongs there. In due time, she will spring forth like honeysuckles in July. Tell her I said she will walk with her head held high. Tell her that she is already that woman that her two natural eyes cannot see. And you tell her I said it. Thank you.
I'm Caitlin. I'll do some introductions of our speakers. Okay. I'll start with Dr. Lumumba. Ebony Lumumba is an associate professor of English at Jackson State University, where she chairs the Department of English and Modern Languages. She received her PhD in English literature from the University of Mississippi and a Master's of Arts in English from Georgia State University, and graduated magna cum laude from Spelman College with a Bachelor's of Arts in English. Ebony specializes in transnational Black women's writing and post-colonial literatures of the Global South. She writes, teaches, and thinks most about Black women's liberation and resistance with publications that include a chapter in From Uncle Tom's Cabin to the Help, Critical Perspectives on White Authored Texts of Black Life, and an article titled Patchwork Politics, Black Women Stitching Their Own Identities in Eudora Welty's Writing. Her forthcoming book chapters include Love This Flesh, Sensuality as a Trauma Response in Toni Morrison Novels, and You Ever See a Bird Smile? Black Women's Revisionist Aesthetic Performance in Welty's Photography and Writing. Then next I'll introduce Mrs. Sanchez. Born in 1934 in Birmingham, Alabama, Sonia Sanchez is a prolific author, mother, and esteemed poet. After earning her BA in political science from Hunter College in 1955, she pursued postgraduate studies at New York University and honed her poetic craft under the mentorship of Louise Bogan. Sanchez boasts a literary repertoire of over 20 books spanning from Homecoming to her most recent collected poems. Notable works include We Are Bad People and Shake Loose My Skin. She also has made significant contributions as an editor, notably with the anthology We Be Word Sorcerers, 25 Stories by Black Americans. Her accolades include the prestigious 2022 Ruth Lilly Poetry Prize and being named the Poetry Society of America's 2001 Robert Frost Medalist. Sanchez's impact extends beyond literature. She was featured in the exhibition Freedom Sisters, recognized as Philadelphia's inaugural Poet Laureate, and her life was documented in the Emmy-nominated film Bad Sonia Sanchez. Sanchez has been honored with numerous awards, including the 2018 Wallace Stevens Award and the 2021 Dorothy and Lillian Gish Prize. Her influence transcends borders, as she has lectured at over 500 universities worldwide and shared her poetry across continents. Residing in Philadelphia, Sonia Sanchez continues to inspire with her words and activism.
Mama Sonia, and we could go on and on and on. How are you?
Oh, I'm okay a little bit. The wind is kicking up again, but I'm fine. I'm sitting here and I saw a view of some of the people in the audience, and it's so good, my dear sister. Oh, Ebony,
It's so good.
again.
We got a little wind kicking here too in Mississippi, and it blew all these beautiful people into the room, and so they're just going to listen to us talk. We're about to converse about all things Black women's writing and that legacy. And just as so we can kind of set the room, you all notice, as one of my students pointed out, I call her Mama Sonia. Oh, y'all wave. Can you see her, Mama Sonia? Woo! I call her Mama Sonia because we are family, we are sisters, we are comrades, and she reminded me just this morning that we are also colleagues, right? That we are doing this work of liberation and storytelling and singing these songs together. So she said there's no baton to pass because she's still in it with us, right? And we are shoulder to shoulder in this work. And so I hope you all will understand that familial term. But I want to start out just giving some context to this conversation. And we're in the room this morning or this afternoon talking about Black women's writing and that legacy. And so we have one of the major players of Black women's writing in our national and community context, Sonia Sanchez, and she's going to share her experience, and we're going to share some of our experiences that join together. But the first thing I want to ask you to do, if you don't mind, is to read us something. Would you do that for us?
I love to do poem that called For My People by Sister Margaret Walker, Dr. Walker.
Oh,
We were at a
yes.
huge conference in New York. I forget the building downtown in New York City, and we were all sitting together, Baraka and Larry, a bunch of people all together. And the program ended, and then someone came out on stage and read For My People. And our group, this post hip group, I had read it, but had never heard anyone read it out loud, except maybe for myself, in terms of a classroom, right?
Right.
And and I, I cried. I started to cry. And I think all of others who were there had tears in their eyes, and we all said, "Who's that? Who wrote that? Who wrote that?" And we said, "Margaret Walker." And it was this thing that it was like a rebirth right there in
Yeah.
terms of what we had been doing, and we had been told that what we were doing not really what we should have been doing. But here, this poem had been read by someone. For my people, my people everywhere, singing their slave songs repeatedly, their dirges and their ditties and their blues and jubilees, praying their prayers nightly to an unknown God, bending their knees humbly to an unseen power. For my people, lending their strength to the years, to the gone years and the now years and the maybe years, watching, ironing, cooking, scrubbing, sewing, mending, hoeing, plowing, digging, planting, pruning, patching, dragging along, never gaining, never reaping, never knowing, and never understanding. For my people, for my people, for my people, for my playmates in the clay and dust and sand of Alabama backyard, playing, baptizing and preaching, and doctor and jail and soldier and school and mama and cooking and playhouse and concert and store and hair and Miss Toomby and company. For the crap they will is going to school to learn to know the reasons why and the answers to and the people who and the places where and the days spent in memory of the bitter hours when we discovered we were Black and poor and small and different and nobody cared and nobody wondered and nobody understood for the boys and girls who grew in spite of these things to be man and woman, to laugh and dance and sing and play and drink their wine and religion and success, to marry their playmates and their children and then die of consumption and anemia and lynching. For my people thronging 47th Street in Chicago and Lenox Avenue in New York and Rampart Street in New Orleans, lost, disinherited, dispossessed, and happy people from the cabarets and taverns and other people's pockets, needing bread and shoes and milk and land and money and something all our own. For my people walking blindly, spreading joy, losing time, being lazy, sleeping when hungry, shouting when burdened, thinking when hopeless, tied and shackled and tangled among ourselves by the unseen creatures who ominously over us and blind. For my people wandering and groping and floundering in the dark of churches and schools and clubs and societies, associations and councils and committees and conventions, and disturbed and deceived and devoured by money, hungry, glory, craving leeches, preyed on by facile force of state and fad and novelty, by false prophet and holy believer. For my people standing, staring, trying to fashion a better way from confusion, from hypocrisy and misunderstanding, trying to fashion a world that will hold all the people, all the faces, all the Adams and Eves and their countless generations. Let a new earth rise. Let another world be born. Let a bloody peace be written in the sky. Let a second generation full of courage issue forth. Let a people loving freedom come to growth. Let a beauty full of healing and a strength of final clenching be the pulsing in our spirits and our blood. Let the martial songs be written. Let the dirges disappear. Let a race of men and women rise and take authority. I mean, even when I read that piece today, you know, you know,
Thank you. Say again.
and then we went to a place called Detroit. Went to a place called Detroit, and that's I met her in person at Dudley Randall when he had a program there for poets, right? And she's tall like me, right? And I remember we could look each other face to face, and we hugged up, put my head on her shoulder, and started to cry because we knew then when we went out of that New York City, we knew what we were doing was correct. We knew what we had been doing was correct. We knew what we were going to do was correct. We knew we had someone there who had done this before us, and what a glory. And we kept saying, we have to meet that sister. We have to meet that sister. We have to meet that sister, And when she hugged me in a place called Detroit, Michigan, and I started, I said, this is my sister. This is my teacher. This is my mother. This is a person who has come before, but who is right on time, still leading, because it doesn't matter how old she was us and telling us what this world was all about and what our role was to be.
I appreciate that because that poem, one, I don't know if you have never heard For My People perform live. You just heard Sonia Sanchez read it, which is a gem in itself. But that poem for me, it drenches you. It drenches you and draws you in, and you find yourself line by line. One of the most, I think, one of the most impactful lines of that piece is that that calling for a new generation, right, full of courage to come forth as if our predecessors, our ancestors were waiting on us and seeding us to come forth, that we were always part of the plan. That's the part that is so encouraging to me. So I want to talk about the writers that came after you, in essence, sort of came during, but also after Margaret Walker, what that charge felt like and what your charge is for those of us who are joining the ranks in the writing. We are marching now with you. What is it that you would say to us, and what does that courage that we are supposed to be full of per Miss Margaret look like?
That's a good question. One of the things we learned from talking to her, to Miss Margaret, and to Sister Gwen, to Dudley Randall, and to Sterling Brown, is that they were walking in history, and we knew also too that we, who had to have sometimes a big mouth and get up on stages and command, an audience of listen, intelligent enough at some point to listen. Thank God for that, right? And we would be invited to Sister Gwendolyn Brooks's house, right? And we came with all the stuff that she wanted us to. And then we sat there, and I said, no, let her read. Let her talk. Let us hear what she has to say. And you put the things down. Not that it was unimportant, but we knew that we were in the presence of people who had struggled in such a way to make people believe that it was possible for a Black person to be a poet. Can you imagine that?
That's something.
A Black person to be a poet.
That's something. Look, can we just sit right there for a moment? The possibility of Black people to be poets, like Miss Phyllis Wheatley.
That's right. Well, my dear sister, there was a man who edited the Norton anthology. And when I started teaching at Temple, they would send the books in, and I went through the book, and there was like, I think Gwen Brooks was the only Black person in this whole bloody thing. So
Wow.
I got on the telephone and looked where he actually called him. It's a lovely story on many levels. And I said, and I told him who I was, and I was now at a place called Temple University. I said, but you supervise this anthology. I said, why are there no more Blacks or Latinos? Why are there no more people? And he said, these are the people that were chosen. And he said, and I'm going to go to class. And I said, well, goodbye. No, I said, I'm not going to use your book
Ever.
2 classes. I just want you to know that. Right.
It's inaccurate.
Well, that went on like that every year for him. There was a big program here at Temple, one of the big conferences, right? And my children told me, "Don't buy any books, Mom. We have books stacked up all over the house now." Okay.
My children say the same thing.
So I went into the place with all the books. I was standing there, and I felt this tap on my shoulder, and I turned around. I thought I brought the book down. He had his wife. He said, "Dear, I want you to meet Professor Sanchez," and he told me he was. So I said, "Oh," I extended my hand. I said, "Oh, what a joy to meet you finally. I've seen pictures of you, right? And I know the work that you do, right?" And he turned to his wife and said, "Let me tell you a story about Professor Sanchez." She called me on the telephone in my office. And she said that if I really did not use, that she was not going to buy, this big anthology where we make lots of money from, right? And she didn't, by the way, And she every year, every semester, she called me, and I say the same thing to him. And he one day, and I'm sitting here looking at him, thinking, "Where's the story going to?" Right? And he said, one day I was sitting in my office, and I said to him, "Why don't you read? I'll send you a collection of Black poetry so you can see what's going on. I'll send you a collection of Latino poetry. You see what's going on in the world." I honestly would do that, right? And he said, "Well, you can do that if you want to, Miss Sanchez, and goodbye, whatever." Well, what happened is that he said, "Dear, do you know, I sat in that office and I began to read." She did send me books, and I did read some of the books. And he said, and I did an anthology, a collection where we had a number of Blacks in that book. Hear that? You got to hear that. That was activism, people. The first bugging that man, I bugged him every so think about it. And
I love it.
Around, and we hugged each other. I said, "My dear brother, thank you so very much for that progress. It takes time sometimes for progress to happen, but it does happen. And I thank you so very much, for doing that, because we cannot read true literature, American literature in quotes, until we read all of the literature that has come out of America." But that was like an amazing moment, really, at that conference.
It's an amazing moment, and the fact that you labeled that activism, I think, is so accurate, right? Picking up the phone and saying, "This is wrong. This is inaccurate. This doesn't look right. This is not all encompassing." That's something that we can all do. And had you not done it, there may never have been a poet like Miss Amira Wallace, who read at the beginning of today's session, having seen herself in those anthologies over the course of her education. So, we give you all of the applause and accolades for doing those measures that seem small, but they are quite big. That was always necessary. Yeah, that's what we talk about, representation. Picking up the phone and saying you're wrong, and not being affected as to whether or not they get it. He may have never told you that story, but you sent those books anyway. You made those calls anyway, and it made a difference. So you're used to causing trouble. We know this. We know this. And as a matter of fact, didn't Margaret Walker say that, "Yeah, y'all think my poems cause trouble, but this one right here, she is doing something." She said that to you. She said that your poems cause trouble, that sort of John Lewis good trouble. But talk about what that trouble looked like. What did it mean to be producing art that was troubling the waters, so to speak?
My dear sister, I was a child who stuttered, right? And
Yeah.
so I was not necessarily a speaker a lot in classrooms. I did not ever read my hand. When my dad took us out of Alabama to New York City, and they told him that my sister and I were back because we came from the South. It was very obvious, being Black Southerners, that we were not up to the par of what was going on in the New York City schools. And that
Wow.
was the first time I ever saw get angry. This Southern Black man who was raised to be a quiet Southern Black man, if you understand that.
Yeah.
He said, well, test him, test him. He said, because, I was a school teacher there. They wouldn't give him a job in the high schools either in New York City. And we were tested, and they put us in, some classes that were really good classes for us to be in. There we were. My dad fought a man who did not sometimes even look at white women because of, you could die in the
Yeah.
South, but maybe
Yeah.
look at it the wrong way. In those days, my dad, who would tell the story that my mother, who died giving birth to twins, whoa, I haven't said that in years, and I haven't had,
Yeah.
who gave birth, and my father, who at some particular point had married this woman who could pass for white. He would tell the story that they were parked in this car. He was a school teacher and a musician, right? And in some place, and they would be kissing, and the police would come and flash the light and say, "Nigga, man, a nigga, what you doing with this white woman?" And my father said, my mother would look up and said, "I am a Negro," whatever. And they looked and said, "Get out of here, get out of here." He took such pride in telling that story, right? And I used to look at his face that when people came on the idiot box in the early years, right? That is a television, in the early years, and they'd be gyrating and whatever. My father would look down at the
Instinct,
newspaper.
just by
He would not look
instinct.
whatever, I saw that. I mean, that was ingrained, in his brain. He would look, and when she went off, he would look up, put the paper down. And I saw that in my dad. And so when you come full circle and say to me, what did I know what I was doing? I kept my father apprised a little bit of what I was doing. And he said, "You can't do that. You're going to get in trouble. You can't do that. You shouldn't do that. You'll get." I mean, all of that happened in our household. And what I did is that I ignored him and kept doing what I was doing. He says, "You're going to get in trouble." And the funny part about it, when I was not to be rehired in a place called New York City, that is liberal New York City, because we were organizing the blacks there, etc. He looked at me and said, "I told you so." But as not luck would have it, we live in a universe, my dear sister, and we were reminded of that universe yesterday, when things went bang, bang and fell out of closets, whatever. At some particular point, I knew, that this was what we had to do, that we had to fight, the university, even if it meant losing the job. But I got a letter from Amherst College that said, "We saw other day, one of the people who led the college, and I was in New York, and Joe Papp was doing one of your plays, and would you like to come and up at Amherst College," right? And I was broke. I mean, really, I was holding out for money, right? We had just got an apartment, Riverside Drive, which costs some money. And I'm just saying simply, "Oh, I don't know what I'm going to do." And then I called him the same day and said, "Well, and what are you offering for this job?" Right. And they told me, and I said, "Yes." He said, "In 2 weeks." And I
You didn't even play it cool.
I did sister. I got that apartment to some people that because it was hard living being Black and Latino living on in Riverside Drive, people, okay, in those
Right.
days. And
Yeah.
we wanted to make sure they in that realm. But those brothers came and they followed me. I drove up there and we got there. And by the time we got there, it was night. And they brought everything in and they said to me, Miss Sanchez, we're not going to leave your furniture in the middle of the floor. Tell us where you want it. And I did a quick look and I did that. And then I went upstairs and they had all these bookcases in my bedroom, study, whatever. And they came up and saw it. We'll bring the books up. I took every penny I had in my purse, in my pocket, every dollar I had, and gave them directions and hugged them and thanked them for that. And that night, children, I fed them some food that I had packed, and they went to sleep in their new beds there, but the men had put down. I went around cleaning the house because I was determined they would not wake up to dirt. I was determined that this move would not mean that we were in disarray at all.
Yeah.
And I went around, and at the same time, I was crying, people. I was sobbing. I go and do this and wipe my face and said, "Oh, you should have listened to your father, Sonia. You should have listened to your father, Sonia, whatever." Motion and movement. And at 6 o'clock, I got in the shower. And then at 7, I knocked on the door and said, "We have to go over to the president's office by 8 o'clock because I'm going to get a check, and we'll be okay." But as I drove from that office and I stopped for a red light and I looked up and there was standing on the corner Max Roach because he was teaching up there.
Wait a minute. Wait. How?
And I honked the horn and they came over and they said, "We heard you were coming up. Don't you worry, Sonia. We're going to take care of you, my dear sister." And
My God.
I knew that I had another in a place called Amherst College. What a joy it was. Yeah. And then don't forget, if this year is the 100th birthday of Max Roach. So if they're
It
having
is.
a program,
Yes.
go see it. Amazing work. And we perform in a place called New Jersey at the Arts there. And Coltrane's son was there. He played the whole group and just listened to that music. And each time before I read something, that's his name, but I called out to all the people that said, "Here we are, we are still here, we're all still functioning, and we're listening to this amazing music that Max and Coltrane and people, when they jumped out of the old way of playing music to a new way of playing music, and
That's right.
it is alive and living." And yeah.
Let me tell you something. The day that you can name drop Max Roach, Gwendolyn Brooks, Sterling Brown, John Coltrane, but what you're doing, there's so many specifically my Black female colleagues, teaching colleagues from this university and other universities and our future colleagues sitting in this room. And what you have done is sort of mapped out this unlikely trajectory that we must have. And so you start with this everyday activism of picking up the phone and saying, "This anthology on Look Right." And then you go to this high probability of what you call being whiteballed, right? And being denied jobs and being ostracized for being determined to do this work with truth and honesty. And then you go into the practical resilience of just cleaning your apartment so that your sons don't wake up to filth and they don't associate your dedication and this movement to lack. And then this community of folks, which has been so impactful to me to hear about how Margaret Walker cooked for you all, to hear about how you all were bringing each other to different cities and mentoring one another, and how you stayed in contact. You told me a story about you and Ruby D going to dinner and Ossie Davis just waiting outside in the car until y'all got done having girl talk, right? And this is the trajectory that we have access to. And so while we might not still be getting our just due in the academy, we have access to this inheritance that you have described here. You have given life to. You've made it real here. That perhaps is only ours, is a birthright. So I want to thank you for that, and I hope you all feel as encouraged as I do in this work. I want to shift to a statement that you made, and then I want to go to your connection with the haiku after that. But you made a statement to me in one of our conversations that while your father was rightfully nervous and scared at moments about the work that you were doing with your art, that you always felt the safest with the students. Can you talk about what you meant by that?
Well, when we went out to a place called San Francisco State after the Black Arts Repertory Theater collapsed because of problems that people had been sent up to make sure that it collapsed, right? We went out there. I walked into the classroom and people were literally sitting in the little chair, those little chairs, when you have a desk, right? And sitting up on like a shelf, whatever. And so I said, well, go see if you can find some chairs. So they went into other rooms and pulled some chairs out, and we had chairs all over. And then they had a blackboard that went all the way around the room there at San Francisco State. And I started writing names on there, had all the way around. And I said, anyone names, and they recognized MLK and Malcolm. Nobody else. No Langston. No other. Not the great man there in the 20th century, right? Not all of this. And I mean, I really wanted to at that time collapse. There's an interest in this. There's a duality that happens when you're teaching things that and you watch the faces of your students. One part of you wants to collapse when you just see them, looking like, oh, really, really. And the other part, that other group, leaning into your words at some point. And so you got to make them connect, and come together. And I remember when I said, but you will at some point, understand what we're doing. So the students would then take they would come, I'm told, like 30 minutes early to make sure they pulled chairs from other rooms. So therefore, we were all packed there together. Those were my students. But let me tell you, that was the beginning there. And one morning in my apartment there in a place called San Francisco, there was a knock on the door. And my landlord, my Japanese-American landlord, who was a wonderful man with a wonderful family and who was so helpful there with me in that apartment, said, Professor Sanchez, there are two men who want to meet you. And they came in and the guy came in and said, FBI. And I said, oh, FBI. Is there a problem that I lived in Haight-Ashbury? And there was always something in Haight-Ashbury, right? And I said, but what's the problem? And he turned to my landlord and said, yeah, put her out. She's one of those. They gave me a special name. It wasn't the names that we would call each other now, but she's one of those troublemakers at San Francisco State. Put her out. At that time, my landlord said, Professor Sanchez, I'll be downstairs, right? I'm leaving. And like dumb and naive. We were so young. We were so young, people. I looked at him and said, oh, he doesn't understand, right? And I said, and I began to explain to him, oh, yes, I teach Du Bois, Langston, I named all these names, whatever. I said, because, and he just looked at me like blank face. I said, because, they weren't teaching them. So that's what I'm teaching. So therefore, these students can get the true history and history, of our literature. I looked at me like, lady, are you insanely insane? That's what we're doing something. Don't you know that like we put a boycott on people that no one teaches them in many of the states, and all of a sudden you young people come out here and resurrect them when we have buried them. Make no mistake about it. And so I'm standing there, and then all of a sudden he said again, "You hear me? You hear me? Blah blah blah." And I backed up because he was getting awfully close. And then my landlord had given me a Samoyed, I come from New York, we could barely feed ourselves and we never had dogs, right? And, I was having great difficulty saying, he said, keep the dog for 2 weeks and then give him back, if you don't want him. And this dog came, Snow, came and sat down right next to me. And I looked at him like, oh, what is this dog doing here? And this man reached for me again as Snow leaped for him. And my brain said, evidently, whatever. And he said, lady,
Snow knew what was
lady,
going on.
lady, get your dog. And I turned and said, Snow. And Snow sat down, but with a different kind of idea, at Snow. That's Snow. I reached down and patted him. First time I ever patted that dog, people, whatever. And then I listened to this man say, the other FBI man said nothing. He stood still, but still water, never looking to the right or the left, but looking straight ahead at a blank wall. And I said, well, I don't know what else I need to say to you. Yes, I am teaching a class there. Yes, I'm teaching a creative writing class there. I'm using Black authors and some white authors who are progressive, and I'm doing this and that and whatever, and Latinos and
Yeah.
and etc. And this man looked at me as if I was insane. I said, so why don't you go? Because I have some other things to do. And they walked out and he said, you hear me? And closed the door, but I went over to Snow and I hugged that dog. And I said, you're a good dog. I'm going to, right, whatever. And buy you a steak because he was in a house of vegetarians, at that point. And so I went out and bought this dog. I could I had almost forgotten how to do it. I kind of braised it and gave it to him. But that, for those students who are here, who have taken some classes on American Lit, I initiated the first course on the Black woman at the place called University of Pitt, and what that meant simply is that they came in and wanted to know. I got a letter from the people that you send that to saying, what would you teach? And I went into the office and went to do this litany of names, whatever. And we got the first course on the Black woman. Can you imagine? A course on the Black woman. There was an activist who had come in from overseas, and I let her do that beginning parts in terms of Africa. What the woman's role was in Africa, et cetera. And then I picked up on that. It was an amazing moment. But let me tell you, I was a young teacher. I always came back around the desk looking at my notes to see where I was, whatever. And as I was doing that, one of the students, the female students, I hate all Black men. And I looked at my syllabus and there was no place that said, I hate all Black men. What do you do, Sonia? What do you do? Because I didn't know what to do initially. And then I looked up and saw the tears and saw the class, and I went around and I grabbed her and hugged her and said, you'll get help here, whatever. And the whole class got up and did that. That is one of the things that happened in that course called the first course on the Black woman. This young, and it was about incest, whatever. So I had to go to that night and redo. I had to put in incest, whatever. Go to the library this weekend and begin that whole discussion, whatever. I had to correct and add some things to it. But I tell you, that class, I didn't expect men in that class. And that they were. They told me later on, as we got into the semester, we came to see what you women were going to be talking about, so we could just tell you that you're. Isn't that something? And it became
the audacity.
Part of the class. They became part of the class, and to talk to each other, within that context, right? Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing something that is visiting us again, right? This challenge to what we will teach and who we will teach, and the content that will be included in our literature surveys and our writing courses. That's come back to visit us, but what you have given us is a resolve and an understanding of how critical it is for us to stand our ground and to teach what we know to be true, and to teach our people and to teach our culture as is owed to our young people. So if you had not done that those decades ago, then we would not have even been drawn to this discipline, to this field, to this work, to be able to do it now again for our little people. And I'm pointing at my girls there in the audience. You talked about this course, the course that you brought about black women to that campus, and I want to end by something that you shared with me, your love for the form, the haiku form in poetry, and how you found yourself in that. And this is particularly personal to me because in that form you produced a tribute to my late mother-in-law, Nubia Lumumba. And I don't know if you have that to share with us, but if you do, I would love for you to cap us off here to end today's session with a reading of either that haiku or another one you might have available that will speak to us.
Well, there are only 4 haiku for Sister Nubia at that time because I got that call. I'd like to end, if you don't mind, with a piece that I did to Sister Toni Morrison, the great writer. I would say the greatest writer.
That's right.
Du Bois and period in our century. 4 haiku for Nubia. Telephone wires sang her voice over soft sister laughter. You held us with summer-stained smiles of hope. I hold your breath today. You sail home across the ocean. I see you, Nubia, walking your Mississippi walk, God in your hands. I had to do that real fast because of the funeral that when my dear brother called me and asked, and they told me about Nubia. And at some particular point, began to understand the difficulties of sometimes when you haven't read something such a long time, that all that just came up. I got a telephone call about when I send something, and I asked like when, and they said today, and I said without missing a beat, because I want you to understand you never miss a beat. You don't miss a beat. You say just like, oh yes, I can do that. I'll send, and then you set the time when it comes out, the stuff time, okay, and you sit down and you do it. I mean, this is what we sometimes, calls and said, well, we like something, whatever. And do you have time, Professor Sanchez? I said, yes, I do, because it's going to go someplace where hopefully it would be, very important, hopefully, and it would maybe begin to change people's ideas about the world. This is the piece I did when I Sister Toni Morrison at I don't know where we were. I think Temple maybe. You said we die. That may be the meaning of life, but we do language. That may be the measure of our lives. And my dear sister, Toni Morrison, how you do this thing called language, the measure of our lives, how you recapture our words, untangle this language, how you stand words up, let them minuet our blood, how you open up the sorcery of language, spitting teeth on the wonder of words, recapturing the wings of our most sacred vows. Listen, you say, summer is around the bend, and you anoint our eyes with surprise, bring us into the flush of rain and laughter called paradise, love, Sula, jazz, tar baby, dreaming Emmett, bluest eyes, song of Solomon, beloved, a mercy, God help the child. We commandeer your words spinning under this domestic sky, and they become a river moving against winter's sails, repelling ice water ghosts, kneeling on razor-thin knees at confession. Our bodies are tattooed forever with your quicksilver tongue, and we are one, alive, apart from the elasticity of the dead. Today, come, my dear sister, breathing in your eyes of silk. And I remember your words. Don't tell us what to believe, what to fear. Show us beliefs wide skirt and the stitch that unravels fear's cave. And I thank you for this prose stitch called home, where men and women, shipwrecked with flesh and disguise, graveyard memories settling in their feet, walk themselves back home in air as black as their smile. Their hearts still searching for gusts of life as they dress their limbs in starch, bones, and memory. I put on my eyes, my dear sister. I am in the eyelash of your memory. Where there is always a small miracle. Call home. Amen, amen, amen. A woman, a woman, a woman, a woman, a woman, a woman, a woman. That was a piece that I did for uh,
Mama, Mama, thank you. I love you. We love you. My husband is messaging me right now to make sure I tell you that he loves you. He wants me to say more than I do, but I'm not going to do that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we can't wait to have you here on this Mississippi soil again soon. Thank you. We love you.
thank you, thank you, baby, thank you. Yeah,
Love you.
love you too.